Hey everybody, welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Bible as a historical document and then discussing the variety of literary styles that are used in the Bible. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to ask you to please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I also want to thank everybody who has subscribed to this channel. Thank you. Thank you. So the Bible isn't just a historical document. The Bible is the most trustworthy historical document that exists. The Bible describes people, places, events, and brings us into their time during history. In fact, the Bible is the history book of the universe, which centers around this very special planet called Earth. The Bible is full of people's adventures, successes, and it also records some pretty gnarly failures. It is helpful to become familiar with customs and nuances of traditions that were going on when the Bible was written. There are some things in Middle Eastern culture that seem a little strange to me in America, but no matter where a person is in time or space or their location on earth, we are all in the exact same situation as human beings that the people the Bible describes were. We can relate to their adventures even though we may be separated by thousands of years of time and miles. The Bible is real history. There is no actual archaeological evidence that has ever disproven the Bible. There are, however, some misguided but well-intentioned people who make adjustments to the Bible's chronology based on the naturalistic science of people who don't believe in God. They have been convinced that they can tell if something has been in the ground for 500 years or 1,000 years based on a series of mathematical calculations that may or may not be correct. The dating may or may not be accounting for every assumption or calculation that they make in order to fill in the gaps. So imagine if I buried something today in the ground and people in the future tried to determine if what I had buried was there for 50 years or 75 years or 100 years. How precise can their dating be unless I actually put a tag on it? Archaeology can be a very valuable tool though, because some people think that the Bible has historical errors in it. For example, critical Bible scholars, people that don't believe in the Bible, used Luke chapter 3 verse 1 for many years to prove that the Bible was not correct historically. Luke chapter 3 verse 1 reads, "Now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judah, Herod being the tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip tetrarch of Iturea and the region of Trachonitis, and Lysanias tetrarch of Abilene." They screeched with glee when they pointed out that Lysanias was not a tetrarch at all, but rather the ruler of Chalcis some 45 to 55 years before the events described in Luke even happened. Well, their party was rudely interrupted when archaeologists found an inscription that said Lysanias was the tetrarch near Damascus right around the time Luke said. It turns out that there was more than one person named Lysanias, and that Luke had gotten his facts straight. Imagine that, the Bible's right again. Also, for many years, critics doubted that the actual city of Nazareth ever existed, until archaeologists found a 1st century synagogue inscription at Caesarea that verified the existence of Nazareth. Now today, we can actually get on a plane and go visit the city of Nazareth. It is amazing to me how people will dismiss the New Testament documents as not being historically reliable, and then they go on to believe what Plato and Aristotle wrote. Aristotle is credited with writing his work somewhere between the year of 385 and 322 years before Christ. However, the earliest copies that we have of these writings is from around 1100 AD. That's 1400 years later. And there are only about 49 copies. Plato is credited with writing his work somewhere around the year 427 to 347 years before Christ. However, the earliest copies we have of Plato's writings is from around 900 AD, which is 1200 years later. And there are only about 7 copies. Contrast that with the New Testament. The New Testament was completed by around 62 AD at the very latest. We have transcripts that date as early as 130 AD. That's less than 100 years later, friends. And we have about 5,600 copies that match the earliest writings. Why would people criticize the New Testament reliability, but not Plato and Aristotle? There are only 2 answers. Either extreme bias, or they've just been taught this fallacy and have not actually thought it through for themselves. So, the statement, the Bible is a historical document derived from history and understood by means of history, is a very important truth. The Bible gives us the true narrative of our universe, our condition, where we came from, where we're going, and a very special invitation from God Himself. Now I'd like to move on to talk about the variety of literary styles that the Bible is written in. The main literary styles that the Bible uses are history, law, wisdom, poetry, narrative, epistles, prophecy, and apocalyptic literature. I would like to identify and discuss these literary styles for the rest of this video. History. We'll start with history. True narratives of real events are the theme in this style. Genesis, from the very first verse, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, and the book of Acts are to be read in the light, knowing that these are all true history. Although other books from different literary styles in the Bible contain history, these books are history. Now let's go on to the style, the law. The books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy are in this category. These books communicate God's will in regards to priestly duties, government, legal rules, and other issues. It is helpful to become familiar with Israeli customs from this time period to get the best understanding from the text. We must also seek to understand the different covenants in the Bible as well, lest we start sacrificing animals in the backyard. Good advice to someone reading the Old Testament for the first time would be to also have a daily reading of the New Testament to stay balanced. So now the books of wisdom. This literary style includes the book of Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes. In these books, we find the thoughts of God's people as they figured out the meaning of life. Sometimes these books use poetry and metaphoric language, which is obvious when one reads through the text. For example, we know women do not truly have dove's eyes, nor is their hair like fine wool. Now I'm going to talk about poetry. The Song of Solomon, Lamentations, and Psalms can be placed into this category called poetry. David was a musician who wrote many of the Psalms. We appreciate these books, and we must know that poetry was used here to communicate God's truth. So now let's move on to speak about the genre of narratives, true narratives. The book of Ruth, Esther, Jonah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are books that I would place in the narrative category. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are biographies telling us about Jesus Christ. In the Gospels, there can be parables, but we know that Jesus gave these parables in a real-life setting and used real-life examples. For example, Jesus did not... Let me start that sentence again. I got tongue-tied. For example, Jesus does not have hinges, even though he's referred to as the door. Ruth, Esther, and Jonah are all true narratives of real life events as well. So now there's another genre called letters. There are 21 letters in the New Testament known as the Epistles. They are written by the apostles to individuals and to different churches, and ultimately to you and me. They have a greeting, a body, and a closing statement or statements. In these letters, we find instruction, clarification, rebuke, explanations, correction, and exposure of false teachings. There is also encouragement with instructions for those who want to leave the elementary teachings behind and go on to spiritual maturity in Christ Jesus and grow into deeper and more understanding and relationship. Understanding and becoming familiar with the cultural and historic settings of these masterpieces will enrich your walk with the Lord. And finally, we have prophecy and apocalyptic literature. Every book from Isaiah all the way to Malachi fits into this style, as well as the New Testament book of Revelation. Here we find predictions of future events, history written in advance, warnings, and a brief overview of things that we can look forward to. Whether some of the things that we have to look forward to are scary. This is to whet our appetite and to spur us on to contend for the faith rather than to make neat little charts as to the exact order of events that'll happen when the Lord wraps everything all up. There's a lot of symbolism and imagery mixed in, even though it is literal in every sense of the word. We must use prayer, discernment, and rightly divide the word of truth to carefully exegete this style of writing. Some things will not be made clear to us right away, but what an awesome future we have to look forward to after all of the great tribulation events occur. So in conclusion, I would like to mention something that became even clearer to me as I was studying and preparing to make this video. Even though I placed the different literary styles into neat little categories, I realized that the different literary styles can and do overlap with one another. For example, many of the Psalms contain history, wisdom, narratives, and prayers. The wisdom writings contain history as well as poetry, narratives, etc. Job is historical, poetic, it's a true narrative, and it gives great wisdom. The Bible is the most trustworthy historical document that exists. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day. God bless you.